Okay, today we have Congressman Eric Swalwell. Thanks so much for coming back on.
Of course. Thanks for having me back.
So let's jump in. So Title 18 U.S. Code 1703A says that a U.S. postal officer who delays any letter shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. What Louis DeJoy is doing is a delay. The mail is being delayed. He can pretend he's making it more efficient, but saying those words doesn't make it true, right? Our mail is already being delayed. So how is this not a crime?
The Postmaster General is enabling a corrupt president right now, and it's more than simply mail-in ballots that are going to be affected. And don't get me wrong, mail-in balloting, which is at the core of our democracy, it enables everyday citizens to have their voices heard. That's important. However, 330,000 veterans who receive their VA prescriptions every single day are threatened by this. And I'm getting a flood of calls from my constituents right now who are saying that their prescription drugs are being delayed. So, I mean, this is truly, it's life and death for our democracy, and it's also life and death for our personal health.
And it's not just medications. It's business owners rely on the mail for timely delivery to their customers. Bills have to be paid by a certain date, otherwise people incur late fees.
I was just talking to a small business owner this morning who told me that they are reimbursed by insurance companies for the services they provide, and they're worried about what these delays are going to be. So yes, I mean it is so much a part of our day-to-day lives. This is one of the oldest and longest standing and most trusted agencies of our government. They've gotten us through the Civil War, world wars. There's no reason they can't do this now. They need to continue to fully operate.
When Trump points out the fact that we've always been able to vote in person during World War I and World War II, why wouldn't we have been able to vote in person during World War I and World War II? Those wars didn't occur on American soil. So he points to those things as if it's some gotcha moment that we've been able to vote during World War I. Were we worried about shrapnel from Normandy hitting people in New Jersey?
That's right. But the Civil War, right? I mean, the mail still functioned during the Civil War, and actually mail-in ballots, were allowed, for troops serving during the Civil War. A soldier in Afghanistan has been able to vote through mail-in balloting, and as you know, the goddamn president of the United States votes with a mail-in ballot. And so it's so hypocritical that if it's good enough for him, he thinks it shouldn't be good enough for you. And that's just frustrating. And the difference between this president and other presidents who have faced re-election is he's probably the first one who will likely face criminal charges if he is not re-elected. And so the incentive to sabotage the election is very, very powerful, and that's what we're seeing play out right now.
I do want to speak about that with regard to Trump, but before I do, I want to stick with DeJoy for a minute. Do you think that DeJoy will face charges?
Well, let me say this, because I think a good question that I'm seeing from my constituents and people on social media is, what is Congress going to do? So I hope we have hearings within the next 72 hours that when the new week starts, that we are able in some way to, get some folks from the post office before Congress. I hope we can vote also in the next week, to fully fund the post office. I know things are moving fast and our leadership is considering what the best course of action is, but we hear you, I hear you, and I know my colleagues, are talking about, what is the best way to respond to this. Now, the obstacle, of course, is we could do all of that, but Mitch McConnell has refused. In every effort we have made through COVID relief, he has refused to fund the Postal Service. And the president has also said he won't do it. And earlier this week, he said, well, if $25 billion means they can do mail-in ballots, I'm not going to do it. So, we can do all of that, but people really, really need to call their Republican senators and really get in front of those senators and force them to convene. Because we've already actually passed in the HEROES Act funding for the Postal Service. So it really is on the Senate. But as to your question, could he face criminal charges? I think in the next administration, we need a presidential crimes commission made up of independent prosecutors, and they should look at anyone who enabled a corrupt president. And this, to me, is almost Exhibit 1.
Would the Board of Governors, who are basically responsible for ensuring that Louis DeJoy would keep his jobs, do they have criminal liability in keeping him in his position in that he's actively undermining the goal of the post office?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Again, I'll go back to, I don't want to be the one, determining, what the crimes are. I was a prosecutor. I mean, there are different theories of, liability when you, enable corruption. But what I want to propose is that we look at everything, and sabotaging the mail and anyone involved in it, I do think, should be considered, for prosecution, and at least have objective prosecutors look at what they engaged in. I mean, the mail is so essential to our daily lives, and for a president to weaponize it for his own political fortune, I mean, that is the height of prosecution. That's the height of corruption in a democracy.
Right, and I think the part that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for them to claim that that's not the case is that Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, admitted that was the goal.
That's exactly right. So, but we're not helpless. I don't want people, to just panic and think there's nothing we can do. Again, there's a lot Congress has to do immediately, but there's a lot that we all can do, including, as I said, registering friends and family, having that plan to vote, save this country. It's worth redeeming, and it's worth building better.
So I know there's a $25 billion stimulus bill in the pipe. Regardless of the specific bill, the point is that relief has to be passed for the American people. Like, there's no way that we can go on with zero relief as we continue to be mired in this pandemic and economic recession. So knowing that, regardless of what bill it is, whether it's the HEROES Act or a new bill, is there any way to attach USPS funding to this bill, along with guardrails that basically mandate that any money should go to paying overtime for USPS employees, for example?
So yes, and again, that is essentially what the HEROES Act does. And in the post-HEROES Act, because it passed over 3 months ago, negotiations, we've continued to insist that we fund the post office. Now, we also believe that as we approach government funding, because by September 30, the government funding will run out, and we're going to have to, plan post September 30. As we have those budget talks, we're going to again use the power of the purse and leverage the majority we have if we haven't solved the problem by then. So, we're going to continue to press on this, but right now we need to make sure we protect USPS whistleblowers and give them the space to come forward and tell the public, what they're seeing, but really, really call on Republican senators to bring this to a vote.
I can only speak for myself and obviously try to echo a lot of the voices that I see online and people that I know, but I do hope that you guys all hold the line on that, because whether it's a bill or whether it's regular funding for the government, that will likely be our only chance to save the Postal Service. And if it's passed without USPS funding or a mandate on how to use those funds specifically, that could basically mean conceding defeat and letting the election get sabotaged. And obviously Republicans know that.
They do. And also they know that by putting this issue front and center, even if they don't actually shut down the Postal Service, they are creating confusion right now. And the fact that people may wonder, will my ballot be processed? Maybe I won't fill it out because all of these issues, maybe I just won't participate. That's a success in and of itself for the president, and he knows that.
Yeah.
But what Republican, again, just ask yourself right now, take a step back from your, fidelity to Donald Trump. Ask yourself, how good does it feel to know that a senior's medication is being delayed because you want to help the president win an election that he probably is going to lose otherwise? I mean, I can't imagine that feels good, and that they're willing to go that far in their loyalty to Donald Trump to enable his corruption, that they're going to let people literally not get their medicine, especially our veterans. It's sick.
I don't think you have a better reason to eliminate this entire slate of Republicans than for that right there. These people have shown, they've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, while attacking the constitutionally enshrined post office, that there's no lengths they won't be willing to go to protect Donald Trump. So, I mean, this Republican Party, this Republican caucus is completely tainted, like beyond repair.
They don't have principles anymore. They have, just further aiding and abetting, of his crimes. That's what they're doing. And they're abandoning, their prior beliefs for the latest, tactic of the day to protect Donald Trump. And they're going to pay a price. Again, it's just a matter of, do people have access, to be able to vote? But get your voting plan together now. Really have a plan. If the Postal Service is functioning and you want to vote from home, make that your first priority. If it's not functioning because the president has sabotaged it, find out where your polling place is and find out how you can, budget the time to get there and take friends and family members as well. But people really need to get a plan right now, because you may have to go 2 or 3 levels down from what you thought it was going to be because of the efforts underway to keep you from voting.
And something that we've seen in, if you look at Wisconsin, for example, when you have egregious, outright Republican efforts to undermine voting, we've seen that it backfires on Republicans. You look at the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, where they closed all but I think it was 4 polling places in Milwaukee in an effort to suppress the votes of Democratic voters. Look how that turned out. We have a Democrat who just took the Supreme Court.
Yeah, people, Brian, they're going to turn out, especially in the year that we've lost John Lewis and are reminded, what people have sacrificed for the right to vote. People right now, I think, will, walk over glass, crawl through fire, do whatever it takes. They just need to know where to go. And that's why, we need to have a, multi-layer plan in case, what we typically expected is not available. And so, but we're going to fight like hell right now to protect the post office. And as I said, I hope congressional hearings in the next couple of days. I hope at least, in the next week that we could have a vote on the House side just on postal service funding. But there's a lot we can do.
So speaking of John Lewis, why not make this a big spectacle? Why not host a sit-in like the one that John Lewis led protesting guns on the floor of Congress? Force Republicans to go on record and defend sabotaging an agency that 91% of Americans support. This is the mail. You and I both know that the GOP would grind the government to a halt if the roles were reversed. So why not go to the wall for this? If we can't win legally, why not at least win in the court of public opinion?
Yeah, and you're right. And what I'm doing is I'm going to, a local post office to, tour it and also hold, kind of physically distanced rally around the Postal Service. I know my colleagues are planning those as well, in the coming weeks. But I do think we have to, keep everything on the table as far as, what we can do to elevate this issue.
So DeJoy is set to testify before the Oversight Committee on September 17th. What should the Oversight...
I hope that's sooner. Yeah, I hope that's sooner.
What's the goal of this, and what do we expect to come out of this testimony?
Yeah, sunshine is the best disinfectant. And so being able to shine a light on, corruption, that brings awareness, for the American people. It also answers questions, that we've had. And also between now and whenever he does testify, we're getting more and more whistleblower accounts so that we can call out, any bullshit excuses that they're giving for why they can't perform the duty of delivering the mail. The people who work at the post office, whether it's a, postal worker, at a facility or a letter carrier, they take so much pride in what they do. They treat your mail as if they are delivering it to their own family. And we really need to support them and give them, as I said, the space to come forward and tell us the truth about what's going on the inside.
And by the way, we just heard that one of the postal workers unions with 300,000 members has just come out in support of Biden. So, it just seems kind of counterintuitive that Donald Trump would attack the very people who are in charge of making sure that those ballots are delivered on Election Day. If ever you've had a vested interest in making sure the mail gets delivered, it's fighting against the guy who is, attacking your very livelihood.
That's right. And again, Donald Trump's vested interest is always Donald Trump. And as I said, what we have to understand, unlike any president unlike any honest election we've had in the past, he is motivated by also not going to jail. That is what most dictators are motivated by. Rachel Maddow had a wonderful segment a couple nights ago where she pointed out that there are no ex-dictators, that there's no off-ramp from presiding corruptly that is one where you would enjoy, freedom and liberty. And I think the president knows that he is exposed to crimes. The Manhattan DA's office is, pursuing criminal charges against him. He is individual one. Mueller described 10 different crimes that he had committed. Who knows what else we will learn? John Bolton described crimes in his book. And so he will desperately try to hold on to power just like any other dictator prior to, our times and those who serve so corruptly right now. And that's what we're up against. That's why it's so important that we all have a plan to make sure our voices are heard on November 3.
So that's a good segue into what you were speaking about earlier, the Presidential Crimes Commission. Can you expand a little bit on that and what that would cover?
I believe that for any administration official who has enabled the president, to commit crimes, to be held accountable, it has to be perceived by the public as legitimate and independent and free from politics. It can't be perceived as retaliatory. And so my hope is that we can stand up a commission of independent prosecutors to take an MRI to all the crimes that potentially have been committed and make recommendations on, prosecutions. I do believe it may take a little bit longer, but it will have the weight of independence, which is going to be so important because the last thing I think anyone wants is for, the next administration to politicize the Department of Justice in the way that this administration has.
Would any basically prosecutions that come out of this commission, would they have teeth, or does this have to be just kind of investigated and then referred to a U.S. attorney's office like SDNY?
Yeah, so what I'm looking at right now is, how functionally this would work. Would it be, hand in glove with the DOJ, or would they make recommendations and DOJ could carry them out? I hope to have a recommendation to my colleagues, in the next couple weeks on that. But I do believe that, people in the administration right now need to know, if you are committing crimes, we are not going to look the other way when this administration, when the sun sets on this administration, that you will be held accountable. And again, I don't want politicians to decide what the crimes are and who the people are. I do think there should be independence in prosecutions. But when you look at what independent prosecutors have already recommended that the president can't be charged with because he's sitting in the Oval Office, it's clear that, there's a lot of exposure out there.
I think making it clear that it's independent is especially important because that Republicans and Fox News are just going to pretend that it's, the left hates Trump, and not because he committed a slew of actual and legitimate and proven crimes.
That's right. And I don't want to go anywhere near any commission like that. Again, I want them to have independence. And if they say there were no crimes committed, great. I hope that's what they say. But if they say that, there were, I hope that people are held accountable. And I hope that the Postmaster General really, looks himself in the mirror and asks, do I really want to have to answer for what I'm doing right now? Or should I do the honorable thing and allow the hardworking men and women at the Postal Service to do their job and help the seniors who are counting on them?
So Americans feel helpless right now. We've persevered through all of the bullshit, the kids in cages, the destruction of our alliances, the coddling of dictators, the pandemic, the recession, all of it. Our last vestige of hope basically comes from the promise of a free and fair election. And now we're watching that basically, be put in danger, get taken away. So what can we do? What's your advice to kind of Americans around the country who are scared and feel discouraged?
It's I hearken back to John Lewis, do not drown in a sea of despair, believe that if we're all up, for causing that good trouble, that change will come. It may not be as easy as it should be, but as I said, count on your representatives, continue to communicate to your representatives, keep the pressure on us to do something in the short term, but, for the next 80 some odd days, put your own plan together, how you're going to register others, how you're going to find your way, to the ballot box, because that's where all the change is going to come. But I'm still hopeful that we are resilient. We know what's at stake, and we see, the light at the end of this darkness, and it is a better America, and we will get there.
And finally, I want to talk about Kamala Harris as the vice presidential nominee. What do you think that the choice for Kamala as VP means for the race?
Well, it's a historic choice, but beyond, the history of, her background as the first, African-American, Indian American woman to be nominated, she's also immensely qualified to be president if she should have to be. I saw in California when she was Attorney General of the largest state in the country during the worst economic time up until the pandemic, that she fought for homeowners who were defrauded by mortgage companies and was responsible for securing the largest settlement in the country on behalf of those homeowners from the banks that defrauded them. And she was tough, she was patient, she was determined, and she got a better deal than other attorneys general who negotiated, settlements far less than what she was able to obtain. And that says a lot about who she knows she's fighting for. And so I'm excited for her candidacy. A personal point of pride, she and I both started our careers in the same district attorney's office, the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, where the creed in that office was essentially, we don't seek wins, we seek justice. Winning and losing was not as important as making sure that justice was served, even if that meant dismissing a case or resolving a case, so somebody, could get a second chance, or going hard at a case because somebody needed to be held accountable. That was, the creed of the office. She knows that. I've seen that, in her throughout her career, and that's going to serve the country well. And I also think it's a unity ticket, right? Whether they were rivals on the primary stage, or Joe Biden's first job right out of law school, public defender. Kamala Harris's first job, prosecutor. I mean, it's unity in every way.
And also, I think, to speak to that point, Republicans and Trump in particular can't wrap his mind around why somebody, Kamala Harris, who was critical of Joe Biden, why he would bring her on. And that kind of speaks to the fact that Trump can't, that all he cares about is loyalty. Whereas, Joe Biden recognized that Kamala Harris is a fighter, and she's, somebody worthy of getting on the ticket. And, if she was tough on Biden, just imagine how tough she's going to be on Trump and, more importantly, Mike Pence during that debate.
That's absolutely right. Again, he doesn't see things through the lens of what's good for the country. He sees them through what's good for Donald Trump. And if you insult Donald Trump or you even question his judgment, you are not good for Donald Trump. Yeah, right. And you're out. And I have to say, Joe Biden called me right when I dropped out of the presidential race. And, during the debate, I, made a case for passing the torch to the next generation. And for him to call me and say, look, my promise to you is that if I'm president, I'm going to do all I can to enable young leaders so that we do pass the torch of leadership. That says a lot about who he is. He doesn't have an ego. And I know he was sincere when he said it. I know he will do it, when he puts his team together.
That's really well said. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Brian.